I started thinking, and I've read other people what they think the top survival skills are, and I thought, I agree with some, I disagree with some. So I made up my own top 7 survival skills. And to me, the survival skills and the prepping skills, they can kind of commingle together. But survival skills are for usually a short-term emergency, but it could last longer. And it is a true SHTF. So I'm going to name my top 7, and you see if you agree with me or disagree. Here we go. First, mindset. You know, that's that will to live. And it means sometimes people overcome unsurmountable, it seems like, odds and still survive a situation. And if you've ever had a terminally ill family member or friend, you know that sometimes there's a goal they want to meet before they die, like see their son graduate high school or their daughter get married. And they make it through that event, and then soon after they pass away because their will to live is gone. You know, I remember seeing a video by Urban Prepper, and he makes all those great little Altoid tin kits, right? And when you open up the tin, inside in the cover was a picture of his son or his family. I can't remember which. But he kept it there because this might, by looking at it, give him the will to survive. So it really is an important survival skill and ability to have. Number 2 is the ability to maintain your core body temperature. I remember reading a book by Cordy Lundeen that was 98.6 degrees, The Art of Keeping Your Ass Alive. I think that was the title of the book. Anyway, it was all about how important keeping your body temperature at 98.6, and not because of incredibly heat conditions, like let's say the desert or whatever, have it go way up, or just the opposite, go into hypothermia. Very, very important thing to have. So your SHTF may be that you're out ice fishing and you fall through the ice. Well, if you're lucky enough to get back out and climb and get to shore into your car, getting warm is going to be very, very important because hypothermia starts very quick. So you need to maintain that core body temperature. And that's the same thing, like last year my sister-in-law and I rented a car and we were out in Death Valley. And I couldn't help thinking, gosh, what would happen if our car broke down? We're kind of in the middle of nowhere. We're not at the prime tourist time. And it can get darn hot during the day in Death Valley. So an important life and death thing is maintaining your core body temperature. Number 3, the ability to obtain drinking water. We all know it is important to have the right amount of fluids. You do not want to get dehydrated during an SHTF situation. So this might involve knowing purification and filtering methods, having equipment with you, or how to collect dew and make a solar still. All those type of behaviors. And if you're in an urban setting, it might be you already planned ahead and you got stored water in your basement, or maybe you have rain barrels, or you know of other areas in the city that you can get drinking water. So number 4, this is medical. This is your first aid. Well, basic medical skills is really important. And it depends on your SHTF, but that could be the number 1 thing you need. If something happened, you hit a femoral artery, you have a very small minutes to save your own life or to have someone save it for you. But things like how to stop bleeding, how to set a fracture, even how to properly care for a wound so it doesn't get infected is very, very important, and it's great skills to have for either wilderness or urban survival. Number 5, I'm calling safety. You know, depending on your situation, you have to make sure that you're as safe as possible. And this could be you want to already have the knowledge to be able to identify poisonous snakes and spiders and annoying plants like poison ivy, right? But it also can be, what do you do if you're being attacked by a bear, a mountain lion, or, in the city, a pack of wild dogs. Or even worse, what happens if you're being attacked by the worst animal at all, another human? So what do? Part of that might depend on the gear that you have with you, but very essential skills to have. And part of that is your situational awareness. You really have to check out where you were. I read of one thing where a person was in the wilderness. They had to make a shelter and they picked the wrong place. So when it rained, the mud came down like a slide and their whole structure and them went into the water. So knowing where to build a shelter is also important. Now food, of course we all love food, but it's not as important as many of these other things on the list, especially if you're in a short-term situation. But if it's more than 3 days, it becomes pretty important to you. You will be thinking about food all the time. So important skills to have is to be able to identify edible mushrooms and plants and berries that might supplement your diet, and weeds. If you're in the city, identifying those weeds is really important. You can get a lot of mineral and vitamins from weeds. You just want to make sure that they haven't been sprayed. And also, are you able to fish? Are you able to hunt? Are you able to trap? All those type of things for food. Are you able to butcher? Are you able to cook in the wild what you've got? Do you have the stuff to cook at home what you catch? Those are all type of skills needed for the food area of survival. Now the last one, I'm just kind of calling it hide and seek, but it's the ability to be found or the ability not to be found. If you're lost in the woods, you want to be found, right? So then signaling would be important, and being able to read a compass and a map and maybe navigate by the stars or the sun, all important things to get out or be found. But you could be in an active shooting situation, and you know what? You don't want the active shooter to find you then. So it's important to be able to hide. So it depends on the situation, whether you want to be found or not found. Well, that's it for my 7 categories. They're not in a particular order, and I want to stress that mainly when you hear about wilderness survival, it's always bringing up the primitive skills generally, bushcrafting, but most people that get lost in the woods, I would say, would have more chance of having a Bic lighter than a ferro rod. So a lot of your survival also depends on the gear you carry with you. So that's why it's important to have the right gear in your EDC or your trail bag or your bug out bag or your get home bag, because that gear can make the difference of life and death. Do you have something to make fire? And hopefully more than one thing to make fire. Do you have something to purify water, a filter, tablets? Do you have a good sturdy knife that you can have help build a shelter or use as a weapon? Do you have the right layers of clothing for the weather expected? All those type of things are important to remember when you're building your EDC or your bags. Now, these aren't particularly in order because it really depends on the situation. You know, when I said food usually isn't that important, well, if you have an infant, it could be very important. You might need infant formula, and that might move right up to the top of your list. And safety might be right at the top of the list if you're in a smoke-filled room and the crowd starts to stampede. And maybe maintaining your core temperature is way down at the bottom because you are in an SHTF situation that has occurred in a temperate climate. So it all depends on what the situation is. But I believe these 7 categories really encapsulate all the skills that are important when you're in a survival situation. So these are my categories. I would love to hear what you think. Next week I'm going to be talking about prepping skills. As always, I love to read your comments below and hear what you have to think, and I appreciate your support so much. Please subscribe, share the knowledge, and thumbs up.